Welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
Always a pleasure to host with you.
It is, man. It always is a pleasure to be in your presence, man. We're here trying to give the community some information, introducing them to people who are doing great things in central Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great show. We got two great guests today.
Right.
And
Got TT with us today.
TT's here, Tania.
Miss Tania. Well, let's be professional.
Yes.
Miss Tania Easton is with us today.
Talk about beauty and wellness.
Beauty and wellness. And I think brothers and sisters, once you get a chance to look at this young lady, you'll know that she is a product of what she's talking about.
Absolutely. And speaking of products, thank you for tuning into this one on Sundays at 5:30 p.m. and on Friday nights at 9:30. Be sure to go to our YouTube channel, WHMB TV, on YouTube, and subscribe. And of course,
There's a plethora of shows on there.
Yeah.
The first show that we had is there, and even this show will be there. And we're just so grateful that you've been checking us out. Everywhere we go, Pastor Jackson, people say, man, I watched the show. I watched the show. I said, keep watching. We need your support.
Absolutely.
And not only your support, but if you want to be a sponsor of Real People, Real Voices, this is the show that you need to sponsor. It's a great show. We'll make sure that you get ample time telling us what type of business that you are pushing in the city of Indianapolis and other places. And we want you to be a part of us.
Yeah, contact the station. And we want to thank Lee Costle and Crawley.
And we want to thank Fervent Care Christian Academy, where you can get your young children started early in Christian education and development.
Call them today at 317-898-2751. Stay with us. We're joined by Tania Easton in just a moment. We'll be back after this. Well, welcome back. We're joined by Miss Tania Easton, and she is the owner-operator of Tania D. Coiffure Studio.
I am.
So your last name is Easton, but the last name in your studio is Coiffure.
Yes, it's a French term for hairstyle. So I am a hairstylist, so that is why that's incorporated into my name.
And I haven't seen that before.
No,
for someone to do it like that.
She's a classy lady. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So you're here to talk about health
I am.
and wellness.
Yes.
First of all, how did you get into hair?
It started, I was about 15, and my great aunt actually was my grandmother's sister is a hairstylist for about 50 years. So I was around the salon at about 7 years old, but I really started having an interest when I was about 15, when I started to assist for my current stylist at the time. So throughout college and high school, I always dabbled in hair here and there. But when I graduated from college, I worked in corporate America for some years. And then in 2008, I decided to quit and go full-time and get my license. So I've been doing it full-time since 2008.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
Your own salon?
Well, I've worked at various salons. I'm originally from Detroit.
Okay.
So I've been licensed in North Dakota because I lived there for a little spell, and then I'm now licensed here in Indiana and in Georgia because I lived in Atlanta as well.
North Dakota?
I did, for 6 months.
What is it? Tell us what's in North Dakota. Is there anybody that you can style hair for in North Dakota?
Well, I do everyone's hair. So I am a multicultural stylist. So I have the ability to style every ethnicity. So I did have a clientele in North Dakota.
Really?
North Dakota's cold, 40 below zero.
Wow.
With the wind chill. Average is about 20 below zero. It's cold about 10 months out the year there. So North Dakota is just North Dakota. If you do a lot of ice fishing, if you like a lot of outdoor sports, North Dakota's your place. If you do not, like myself, North Dakota's just...
And you moved to Atlanta.
Then I moved to Atlanta.
That was extreme.
My father stays in Atlanta, so I stayed in Atlanta for about 3 years, and I love Atlanta. Atlanta is awesome, but my mother's here, so that's what brought me here. So here I am, and I've been here since January of last year, so not a full year yet. So I'm still getting acclimated to, The culture here in
It
Indianapolis.
is different, isn't it?
It's very different.
Yeah.
It's everything closes at 10. So, I had to kind of get acclimated to everything closing a little bit earlier, and I'm still in the midst of building a clientele, and it's going well. So I'm opening new opportunities and doors so I can go ahead and service the people.
Well, talking about healthy hair, for those who are watching and have hair,
Not you two.
what
Why didn't you say Jackson?
Not to two of you.
She said, okay, go right ahead. Tell us. Go ahead. Ask the question, please.
what are the key steps to healthy hair?
So when I have new clients, we do a consultation, and I give out a 16-step to healthy hair. The basics, you have to cleanse your scalp, at least every 2 weeks, no more than every 2 weeks. Make sure you're shampooing, conditioning, deep conditioning, protein treatments, getting your accurate, your trims, and every 8 to 10 weeks. Those are very important things. And a lot of women don't do that. With the natural movement over the last 10 years where everybody's going away from relaxers and perms to wearing their natural hair, there is a gap in between knowing how to care for your hair and getting your hair to grow without the chemicals, because a lot of people are used to having chemicals in their hair. So there's been a big education gap knowing how to care for natural hair. So that's what I specifically cater to with my clients. I'm bringing them in there. Most of them have not been to a salon in 2 or 3 years. So it's a matter of doing a whole hair makeover. So I call it a healthy hair care plan, where I go over, the proper diet. You have to make sure you're drinking a lot of water. Water is a big part of hair growth. So if you're not drinking a lot of water, and you're not eating your vegetables and your folic acids, and you're not having the vitamin D, you're gonna have a hard time with your hair growing the way that you want it to. So you have to make sure that you have that proper balance. There's extremes. Some people come in and they're eating horribly, and they're like, well, my hair's not growing. And I ask them, the first thing I say, well, what are you putting in? What are you eating? Are you drinking enough water? Because that's key. And most of them, well, no, I don't drink enough water. So that's something that I do, not just hair. I often educate you on what you need to do from the inside out to have that proper hair growth.
Yeah, I was going to take a drink of water right now. That's what she was talking. I said, I must be dehydrated.
Yeah. She talked you into coming out of dehydration, huh?
Yeah. So it's exciting to know that you're helping people go through that transformation. So what about folks who are still wanting to get the tracks and extensions and things like that? Do you offer that service as well?
So years ago, I used to offer the extension services. I've gotten away from doing that only because there's a maintenance that goes along with that. And throughout my career, I've noticed that women, they get the extensions, they get the units, and they keep them in too long. And then the hair is compromised at that point, so you're not getting any hair growth, which in the beginning, that was the intention of doing the extensions
to grow your hair,
or braids or protective styles. That was the initial intention, was to grow your hair out. But now there's a gap where you don't want to necessarily shampoo your hair on a regular, or you feel that because you have extensions and now you don't have to go and visit your stylist. And I often say, well, you do have extensions, but you have to still care for the hair that's under the extensions. So I just did away with the whole service. I don't even offer the extension services anymore. So I don't do any braiding. I don't do any extensions. I strictly concentrate on your hair that's growing out of your scalp, your real hair, your natural hair. I don't, I often say my clients, the clientele that I service now, I don't do relaxers to them. No one has a relaxer or a perm. So my specialty is color cuts and natural hair.
Color cuts
And natural hair. So if you're looking for an awesome chic fly cut, I'm your person. If you're looking I'm a color specialist, so if you're looking for color, I'm your person. If you're looking for healthy hair, your natural hair, you're into hair growth, I'm your person. So those are my 3 key things that I stick to.
That's great.
So where does wellness come in? I mean, we know about your specialty with hair, but how do you get into the wellness? So probably about when I was in college, maybe my sophomore year in college, I started to really focus on health. My college that I went to, Wayne State University in Detroit, that I graduated from, they built a state-of-the-art gym
on campus. So that's what kind of moved me into the healthy portion of it. So that was my journey. So it's been a long time. So I've incorporated that into my clientele. When they come in, I've incorporated organic snacks. So they'll get, like veggie straws or something like that, or an organic option. They won't get, Reese cups or, something that's not so healthy for you. I try to always kind of push that on them, indirectly, giving them, water or, tea or coffee. And then when we're in the chair, I always just try to tell them, they'll ask me, well, what are you doing? You look pretty good. I'm almost 40, so I consider myself to look pretty. I'm pretty good for 40. So they always ask me what I do, so I tell them, what you should be eating. I do smoothies every day, my green drinks, and I'm making sure that I'm taking my multivitamins and I'm getting my DHA in and things like that. So I always make sure that I'm incorporating healthcare or wellness in some form or fashion in our visit, whether it's telling them exactly what to eat or, getting a blood test to figure out what blood type you are, because what you eat is essential to your blood type. Yeah. So if you're eating something that's not comparable with your blood type, you're never going to get that optimum health that you're supposed to have.
Well, thanks for sharing your gift with us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Stay beautiful.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I will. Thank you so much.
And stay with us. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices, and we're joined by Jack Frisbee. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Talking to us about selling.
Yeah.
Optimized Selling. You're president and CEO of Optimized Selling, and interested in knowing what servant selling is.
Yeah.
I've heard of servant leadership.
But servant
Right.
selling is a new phrase for us. Could
Yeah.
you explain that to us?
Yeah. So Jesus said, whoever wants to be great among you must become a servant.
Yes, that's scripture.
So the $64,000 question is, can that possibly apply to sales? And so, when you look at that idea, if we want to be a better parent, we need to serve. If we want to be a better spouse, we need to serve. If we want to be a good business owner, we need to serve. And so my contention is that if you want to be the best salesperson, that you need to serve people, because what's inside your heart oozes through your pores. And so if you're just trying to sell somebody something, then that's going to ooze through your pores. And
Let's be
people-
real, Jack. Come on, let's be real now. The servant, the service end of our society is at an all-time low. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
And tell us why that is. You go to certain places. You go to certain
That's a lot of
places.
pressure.
Yeah, I mean, you go to certain places, and
Yeah.
many years ago at McDonald's, there was
Yeah.
no such thing as a drive-up wait line.
Which is longer.
It's just just years
Right.
ago, service in this country was phenomenal. What
Yeah.
happened to it?
Well, I think a lot of people are just so self-focused. Everybody's trying to find themselves, and everybody's focused on themselves. And I think the model that Jesus sets for us is be other-centered, be focused on the other guy.
Right.
And frankly, we've just lost that. We don't live that way. And so that's why, for me, the idea of servant selling, somebody can really distinguish themselves if, when they sit down with a prospective client, if they just truly listen to that person. For example, they ask good questions, and there's a great character quality, the quality of attentiveness, which is showing the worth of a person by giving my undivided concentration. Well, when you do that with somebody, what happens is that person, there's an emotional connection that's made there. And science research tells us that people make decisions emotionally, and then they justify those decisions with logic. So if I sit down and ask good questions and I just listen and I'm genuinely interested in somebody, there's an emotional connection that's going to be made. And that person subconsciously is going to go, I want to do business. I want to find a reason to do business with you. And then later we can kind of tell them more about the details of what we do. But what happens so many times is that a salesperson kind of walks in the room and just starts pitching their stuff at people, or what I call pitching their crap at people. And there's nothing that's less emotionally engaging than having somebody pitch their stuff at you, right? But we all want to be listened to, and we all want to be shown that kind of worth or that kind of value. And that's, to me, what Jesus demonstrated for us. And so it's the truth, right? I mean, interestingly enough, it actually works. in a business setting. And it's no different than a leader of a company who has employees and or clients, and it's the same thing. It's just their people. And so, my perspective is that these are the people that God's put in your flock, and you're there to be the good shepherd to them. You're there to essentially pastor them. Mm-hmm. So same thing with an employer and an employee. If that employer truly listens to his people and demonstrates an interest in them, then guess what? They're going to run through a brick wall for that person,
mm-hmm.
And
get the job done.
It just makes sense,
Yeah.
So Optimized Selling, I perceive is your company. You started it. How did you get into that?
Just a long history of sales and then sales leadership and sales training. I was vice president of sales at a company, and then left that company about 15 years ago, and wanted to do more training and wanted to do more leadership with a variety of different companies. So basically the model for the company is that I work with small businesses that typically aren't large enough to have a full-time vice president of sales. And so I read a lot, and so I've written a book, Stop Selling, Start Serving, and so I just, I consume this stuff, right? So I connect the dots in ways that most people don't, because most people don't have that kind of a level of interest in sales. So for me, I know sales process and the ability to be able to go into a company and serve them by helping them figure out their sales process when the business owner may not have a clue about that or just may not have time. They're busy running the company, and so they need somebody that can just come in and say, well, let's kind of work out your sales process, and then if they do have salespeople, then my role becomes to coach those salespeople and to hold them accountable and have the kind of cadence of accountability where I run the sales meetings and all that kind of stuff where they don't have the time to do that or the expertise to do that, and they can't afford a full-time sales manager to do that.
Small companies.
Yeah. Typically, a couple of salespeople up to maybe 5 or 6. Typically, if they get much beyond that, they're going to have a sales manager or a VP of sales.
So you say people don't want to be sold, they want to be served.
Yeah.
Talk about the difference there a little bit more.
Right. So again, I think it goes back to that idea, again, not that we're trying to manipulate people, but if I have a true servant's heart and I serve somebody, it kind of goes back to your comment. People want to be served, right? They want, if you go to a restaurant and it could be the best food in the world, but if you have bad service, it's a bad experience.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think, it's just part of the human condition. People want to be served more than they want to serve. And so if we can be kind of the light on the shining beacon, if we can be the light on top of the hill and be the people that are serving, then that's going to show up very different than what, the world is going to show up as.
It's a conversion. To serve people is a conversion.
Yeah.
You just can't serve people, do a job and say, well, this is what I'm doing to help this particular situation.
Yeah.
Because when you serve people, in many cases, you're going to come out on the short end of it. In many cases, if you're sincere about it.
Right. So that's a very good point, because one of the things I talk about in my training when I train on this kind of thing is to say it's not quid pro quo.
Right.
So that, I'm not serving you with this kind of handout to say, hey, now you remember me, right?
I've done something for you.
Now there is part of it's part of the human condition. Robert Cialdini wrote a book called Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion, and one of the things he talks about there is this, what he calls the rule of reciprocity. So it is part of the human condition that when somebody does something for us, good or bad, right, we have a tendency to feel the obligation to repay. And I would say good or bad, because if somebody does something bad, you want to get back at them. You want to, so I think there is good psychology. Again, I think it's just it's an example of how it's the truth of God's word. God was the one who told us these things, right? And it's just how the human condition works. And so it works in the context of sales.
Yeah.
We have just a few seconds left. The name of your book?
It's called Stop Selling, Start Serving, and it really details the servant selling model. So that word servant, again, Jesus said, whoever wants to be great among you must become a servant. Right. And then the letters of that word are also an acronym. So there are 7 letters, which represent 7 principles of selling. And so in the book, I just go into all of those principles of selling so that somebody who's maybe a young person who's going into sales for the first time can pick up the book and feel like, okay, now I kind of know what I'm supposed to be doing, because it's a pretty comprehensive perspective on sales. So,
Outstanding. Well, all the best.
well, thank you.
Keep up the good work, Jack.
Thanks. Good meeting you guys.
Yeah.
You too.
Yeah.
And we've got some more to come. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
You know what, and I'm your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
And I'm Sherry Peak Davis, your executive producer.
And we want to thank you all for joining us. And please be sure to support Lee Kossel and Crawley, one of our sponsors.
Not only that, Fervent Care Christian Academy, where you can get your children started early in not only education, but good Christian education, good clean education. So consider Fervent Care Christian Academy.
Give them a call today, 317-898-2751. Sherry, you had a wonderful 2 segments there, one on beauty and wellness, the other on servant selling. Your thoughts?
Well, beauty and wellness is always in order for both males and females. And
I
so
knew you would say that.
don't want to leave our males out, but you know, it's always a conversation when we think about our outer beauty. We want to think about our inner beauty as well. And definitely with the new year coming, you know, everybody's thinking about health and wellness and beauty. So it was a very timely conversation, and she shared some really good tips.
Yeah. Especially about drinking more water.
Yes.
That results in more hair. That's what she said.
Well, it does, along with eating vegetables.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, you know, and if you can do that, we might be able to regenerate some things on top.
There might
of
be
it.
hope.
It might be hope for us.
Yeah. And servant selling.
Unique phrase, isn't it?
Yeah. So we heard servant leadership, but not servant selling. But he was right. Mr. Frisbee was right. Jesus laid out the principles for selling. He was a master salesman. So if we apply those, I think we can see a lot more results. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us. Please be sure to continue tuning in 5:30 on Sundays and Friday nights at 9:30 for this show. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook.
You want to be a sponsor, contact the station.
We'll see you next time.